right, I'm here with Tim White, who's head of security at our school. We're going to talk a little bit about fire extinguishers and requirements for the fire extinguisher design project in Science 10. Before we get started, I first want to start, if you could just explain a little bit about your experience in fire safety and environmental health and safety and what your role is at the school.
Sure. My primary career field was fire service. So I have 30 years in the fire service, seen a lot, done a lot with fire, rescue, and as my career evolved and I retired from the fire service, I decided to get into security and safety because a lot of my credentials from the fire service and my degree transferred over to that area. So I thought with federal emergency management expertise would be useful in the security field. So I kind of migrated over to that profession, and it's worked out well.
Great. I was thinking about this before we even had our meeting. Fire extinguishers, I've actually never had to use one. Has anybody in your knowledge had to use one in our school, like grab one and do anything?
Not in my knowledge. Now, most of our fire extinguishers, except for some specialized areas, have ABC type extinguishers, which are dry chemical, and they expel the powder.
Right.
And of course, I believe your team of students are working on a different project, which is the CO2 extinguisher, which is a different type of component that you don't primarily see too much in a business or educational institutional class.
Yeah. Great. Well, I want to talk about a little bit about what a fire extinguisher should look like, because the design of a fire extinguisher is really important. And as the students design this, I want to make sure that we understand what are the target objectives, how should this look, how should it feel, how should it operate. Hopefully we'll be really familiar with the chemistry, but as a physical entity, if we want it to be used, it has to look in a specific way. So the first thing I wanted to ask about is, and we've discussed a little bit, what do you think the proper dimensions for a fire extinguisher like this that can sit on a table? It can be in a lab, it could be in a kitchen, to make it useful. What are some of the parameters that are important?
Well, and I think we all notice that fire extinguishers are typically red. Now, in this particular case, on what the students are working with, that may not be a criterion. The reason why it's red is because it's readily picked up by our eyes as far as, I have an emergency. I need something to put out this fire, and our eyes are attracted to the color red in the color spectrum. So that's typically why they are red. Not necessary in this particular case, I don't think, Mr. Zaylor, in your criterion. 30 centimeters cubed as far as the volume goes, and not to exceed a half a kilogram.
Of weight?
Yes, is what we're looking for. You're looking for the propellant to expel at about 1 meter, I believe. A typical CO2 extinguisher will go 3 to 10 feet, but those are under extreme pressures, and the containment vessel is reinforced steel, very heavy. A CO2 extinguisher is extremely heavy, mostly because of the volume and the pressures that are involved. In your particular experiment, what the students are working on, I think there's different parameters there. And I think that the substances all have to be contained within the containment vessel. So it's something that we're not really looking to, hey, I have a fire, let's mix these chemicals, get the chemical chain reaction to get the desired result. So they all need to be within the containment vessel and have an initiation mechanism. Now, a typical CO2 fire extinguisher has a squeeze handle. I don't think that that's necessary, or you're not requiring that. You're looking for possible innovation or other ideas, letting the students challenge themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think it would matter if for the size, if 30 kilometers, would it be okay if it was fat? Does it need to always be long, or as long as it fit inside that, you think that would be okay?
That would be okay, because innovation is key. These designs have been in existence since the beginning, the cylindrical design, and innovation is always good. We don't know that as we move forward as human beings in our society and in our culture, that hey, we may need to modify this, or wouldn't it be a good idea if we
Yeah.
did this for this particular application? A lot of them are mobile. This could be a fixed unit. We're not really sure what the students are really looking for,
Sure.
so it could certainly go with.
And a half a kilogram is pretty light. It's probably about 6 to 10 pounds in that range. Does that seem about normal for a fire extinguisher? Is that about the same weight as typical, you think?
Well, as far as you mean a half a kilogram?
Yeah, that seems good.
So that's relatively light for
Easy to grab.
Yes,
Okay.
that's quite mobile. They do make them in that size, typical for an industrial class or a commercial class. For a CO2 extinguisher, they go like 5 pounds of propellant.
Right.
That doesn't
Okay.
include the containment vessel, which weighs considerably more. So
Right.
CO2 extinguishers are actually quite heavy.
Okay.
But for this purpose, I think that would be perfect.
Great. You mentioned about the appearance of it, so we know a little bit about the size, we know about the weight, and we know that it needs to be contained in an initiation mechanism. When you mentioned about the appearance, it seems like there are some important elements to its identification. You mentioned red, which is not necessary for this, but are there any components that, as part of a best practice of fire safety, should be on the device?
Well, yes. Well, one thing that takes into consideration is what product are we trying to extinguish, or
Okay.
what is its applicability?
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, you have the ABC type dry chemical extinguishers. You have water extinguishers. Those were very popular back when I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
There was no dry chemical extinguishers. They were all water based.
Okay.
And pressurized water, basically. And those were just for Class A fires, or ordinary combustibles such as wood, paper, cellulose material.
Okay.
And then you get into the CO2 type extinguishers, which this is what should be labeled as for a Class B fire,
Okay.
which is for petroleum-based products.
Yep.
Breaking up that fire triangle and that chain reaction. You're trying to snuff that out, either
Okay.
starve it of oxygen or bring down the overall temperature of the combustible material. So the extinguisher should be marked for Class B. And of course,
Okay.
this type of extinguisher can also be used for energized electrical equipment.
Sure.
So that's one of the things that's good. If you have a computer or something that's electrical in nature that is sensitive to water and chemical, dry chemical,
Yeah.
this being CO2, a gas, will not destroy the electrical components.
Oh, great.
But of course, it has to be degenerized. Am I saying that correctly?
De-energized.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Zoller. Help me out with this.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you want to take away that electrical component just in case there's some type of conductivity.
Okay.
Chances are with CO2 gas it wouldn't be, but safety is always a concern.
So Class B.
Class B
okay.
is the way to go.
Great. Anything else that should be on it?
Well, yes, I mean, we need the pressures, so we need the pressure label, and it needs to label with the expected chemical yield.
Okay.
So, in other words, we don't want to, if somebody were to come up to the student's device that they've manufactured, they want to make sure that the end user does not expect more from the extinguishing device than it is capable of.
Okay. So chemical yield, Class B, and what was the other thing you said?
Chemical yield and the pressure.
Oh, the pressure. Great.
Yes.
So we should have some calculations to support what the expected pressure output is too?
Yes,
Okay.
very important, because that's all going to affect pushing out that volume within the containment vessel, and of course the reach of delivering the product to the combustible material. So all of those factors need to be taken into consideration.
Okay, great. That's great. Thanks for your time, Tim. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Mr. Zoller, and thanks to the students who are willing to step up and take an innovative and scientific approach to the challenges that we face in overall safety, both in educational, business, and institutional classes.
Great. Thank you so much.